All right, guys, it is Tuesday night. It is time for another weekly installment of Conversations with Commodores. And I've got a former teammate of mine out of Kentucky, number 78, Bob Craycraft. How are you doing tonight, Bob?
Doing great, Bernard. How are you?
I am doing well, and I sure appreciate. I'm just checking to make sure we're live in the site, and I think we
Yeah,
are. But I appreciate you making some time tonight. And as we're doing, we've done for almost 4 years now, is we're telling the oral history of our football program. We've had guys from the 50s all the way to this current year's team, where Ethan Barr was on. We had Ben Bresnahan, it was on 2 years from the last year's team, and I love just reconnecting with old teammates. Bobby and I haven't talked or seen each other in decades, but it's so good to see you tonight, Bobby. I really am looking forward to our conversation.
absolutely excited.
And before we really go back into the Wayback Machine, I want you guys to know, if you don't, and I think a lot of you do, Bob's current has a connection with another former teammate of ours, Henry Beelan, in that both of their sons play at Duke right now. I think they're 7-5. They're bowl bound. They've had an outstanding year. And Bobby, uh, do you spend more time in your hometown in Charlotte, or do you spend more time in the Raleigh, or excuse me, in Durham, or on the road following the Blue Devils all over the ACC?
Well, definitely 12 weekends a year. I am definitely in Durham or wherever the Blue Devils are playing. That's where I'm at. So, I my goal is to miss none of the games. And, fortunately, my wife is she's got the fever now. So we love going to games, and I still have Matt has a younger sister, Lucy,
Mhm.
and she goes to the games as well, and she gets all fired up and is a great supporter of her big brother. And for I don't know who Lucy will eventually marry, but he'll be a pretty happy guy because she knows more about football than any 16-year-old girl.
Well, I was going to say, Bobby, she's got about 125 older brothers right now who are teammates of Matt. That's pretty
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah,
Does she
but
have her sights set on Duke, or do we know yet?
no, she's trying to figure it out right now. So she's a sophomore in high school, and
She's
she's
got
doing
some time.
the thing. Yeah, so she's got a little time. So she's we lived in Dallas for 11 years. We moved here in June of 22,
Mhm.
but we had lived the prior 11 years in Dallas, and so she's definitely more of a Texas is really her home, that she knows. And I think she'll probably go back somewhere in SMU or TCU or something like that. She'll probably head back that way for college.
Is SMU joining the ACC?
They are. Yeah. So
So you
next
never
year,
know. You
yeah,
never know.
yeah. So next year they'll be in with us, and we actually play them, I think, next year. So yeah, it's good. But we lived probably 3 miles from SMU's campus when we lived in Dallas, and we know that well. So had a great run while we were there.
Well, you also know the state of Kentucky well, having grown up in the heart of
Absolutely,
basketball country. Tell
absolutely.
us a little bit about your background, and how did you escape from Big Blue or from the Cardinals and make your way down to Nashville to join us in 1987?
Yeah, so it is kind of an interesting story. Growing up, I grew up in Ashland, Kentucky, which is right where Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia meet. I mean,
Mhm.
literally one bridge you go across, you're in West Virginia, one you go in Ohio. Small little town. Actually, the town I grew up in was called Calixburg, Kentucky, about 4,000 people. And so I went to the county school, and here I am. Not a heavily recruited area, but I was very fortunate that Ashland Oil was based in Ashland, Kentucky at the time. And there was a guy named John Hall, who was the chairman and CEO of Ashland, who was also a former Vanderbilt offensive lineman.
Mhm.
And he sent my name down to the Vanderbilt guys and said, "Hey, here's a kid you ought to take a look at." And fortunately, I was very fortunate to get the opportunity. But my mom and dad both went to Kentucky,
Mhm.
and so you would think, to your point, I'd have gone to Kentucky. And the story I tell everybody is Jerry Claiborne was the coach at the time I was getting recruited, And so my first official visit was to Kentucky. And of course, the way we did it back then, right? You didn't get your offer until you went on your official visit. So, I went in Kentucky, had a great weekend there. I tell my dad Sunday morning, I'm like, Dad, I go, hey, man, I love Kentucky. You're an alumni. We were season ticket holders, right? I mean, we've been season ticket holders since I was a baby. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to commit right now. And so I go into Coach Claiborne's office. I'm sitting there, and he starts, doing the pump up deal. And he goes, you know what? He goes, hey, you're Mr. Football finalist. Your mom and dad went to Kentucky. All your friends, mom and dad's friends went to Kentucky. If you come here, this guy's going to come, and so you owe it to the state of Kentucky to come here. And even as like a 17-year-old kid, I was like, what? I owe it to the state of Kentucky. And the crazy part is my dad's sitting, in the chair next to me, and he just all smiles and giddy. And so I was like, Coach, hey man, I appreciate the offer. I've got some other trips coming up, and we'll go from there. So we walk out of the office, and my dad thinks I had literally committed. He was like, oh great. I was like, Dad, I didn't commit.
So he really wasn't listening.
He was not listening. He was in such a euphoric state, that I was going to go there. And I said, did you hear what he said to me? And so I didn't go. And so my next trip was Vanderbilt. And so I came to Nashville a couple of weeks later, and it was a midweek visit. For some reason, I had to do it kind of a midweek thing, and John Donardi was my host, and
end of story. You commit right there. That's all you needed.
The rest is history. And I've never been in a bar before. I've never been to some other establishments ever in my life. We go into Banditos, and made a few other stops along the way. And the next thing here's this good, Eastern Kentucky hillbilly hanging out with the guy from the south side of Chicago. And, we were able to do it. And then Kevin Brothen was my roommate on that same trip. So we were roommates together. And of course, he's from the south side of Chicago as well. And, so, the next thing I'm like, holy cow, I'm going to Vanderbilt.
Bobby, little did you know, but you didn't have a chance. There
That's
was
right.
no way you were
right.
saying no to Dino. That's for sure.
That's
But
right.
Bobby, before they roll off, I got to tell you who's rolled in. We got Tyler Chastain. Lewis Woolridge says to tell you hello. Kevin Dowling, Dwayne Jones, Joe Peebles.
Oh. Awesome.
When there'll be more, I'll let you know. But yeah, you didn't have much of a chance. Now I got to back up, and I hope this isn't too personal. Did it create a problem for you with your folks that you didn't commit to Kentucky, that you committed to Vanderbilt?
It's they were always 100% supportive, and so really it was never an issue. And it's funny, when I was struggling with the decision, right? So I didn't commit. So I went to Vanderbilt. They gave me the offer, and then I came home. And then like 2 days later, Watson Brown, who was our coach at the time, right? Watson and Rick Christoffel, who's my recruiter, they came up to Ashland, Kentucky. They came to Boyd County, the high school. And I remember I was like, God, and I was really struggling with the decision around Kentucky, Vanderbilt for all the reasons we talked about. And so my grandmother, I was very close to, grew up in depression. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, I get all emotional, but, she told me, hey, they can never take your education away from you. And I was like, okay. Sounds good. And so, next thing you know, I was at Vanderbilt, and that was really the deciding factor, right?
That was your secret weapon, right there.
That was my secret weapon. And so, man, I tell you what, it was. She was wise, for a woman with a 8th grade education. She was pretty special. So, I guess so. That was that was there. So unfortunately, if I've got older, I'm a big emotional, I'm an emotional midget. I mean, it's terrible, but
Hey,
that's the story. That's the story. And so, once my grandmother kind of put the stake in the ground, then everybody else just lined up.
hey, matriarchs have a way of
They do.
pulling rank and just kind of letting you know how things should
Absolutely.
be. Bobby, I think that's fantastic,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you sharing that story,
Yeah.
because making a decision, whether you appreciate it then or not, as an 18,
Right.
17, 18-year-old,
Yeah.
you don't realize it's setting you for the next 40, 50 plus
Right.
years. And now looking back, now that you're on the other side as a parent, did that impact your decision making, or assuming that you were part of Matthew's decision making process? Share us a little bit about how he got to Duke, and were you part of that, or what was involved with his decision?
Yeah. No, I mean, the funny part about Matt's journey was, and I tell everybody this was a stroke of genius on my part, but it was really just a stroke of luck. Is that Matthew never played football young, right? I mean, even though we were living in Texas, where youth football is, I mean, over the top, he
Mm-hmm.
played hockey, and so we played travel hockey from the time he was about 7 years old, all the way up to his sophomore year in high school. And what was great about that is, it was great for his feet, great for his balance, great for his core. And my whole time he was playing it, I was like in my back of my mind going, this is all good. And he played his sixth grade year. He didn't play seventh grade year football. He played eighth grade year. But what happened was, when he was in about eighth grade, he decided, hey, I want to play D1 sports. I want to get a scholarship. And so he was going down the hockey track, and hockey's very, very difficult track because there's a lot of factors.
Particularly coming from the South.
Oh yeah, coming from Texas, yeah, crazy. But he realized, as he was playing up in the levels and getting higher levels, he could he could play. He was a big boy. He's big on skates. I mean, he won a lot of pucks and scored a lot. But he realized he didn't have the speed to be a Division I player. But he knew football came naturally to him. He had a good IQ and football IQ, and so he really started to shift. And then really, from his freshman year on, he really got out of travel hockey, played some high school hockey, but then really focused on football at that point. And so he always knew that he wanted to be higher ed, Power Five. That was our goal, right? So Stanford, Northwestern, Duke, Vandy, and so he played 6A Texas football. In the biggest division down there. He played for a private Catholic high school called Jesuit. Had a great high school coach who was an offensive lineman himself. I think Matthew was the fifth or sixth offensive lineman in a row of classes to go D1 there. So, he had a great foundation. And so, what was crazy about his journey is, and how early these kids start getting offers, is that after his sophomore season, and he played varsity as a sophomore. There was only two sophomores that played varsity that year. One of them is a kid playing safety at Northwestern right now, and then the other one was Matthew. And he got to play quite a few snaps, and we went deep in the playoffs that year. We went about 4 rounds in the playoffs, and we had this secret weapon running back named Emmett Smith Jr. was our lead running back. He was a senior, and Matthew was a sophomore. And you could just hand the ball to EJ, and things would happen. And but what happened was, because we went so deep, because he was playing as a sophomore, he got an offer from Arizona State right after his sophomore season. And so then that kind of put him on the grid, right? A Power Five conference, offering a sophomore. So then all the 24/7 and all that crazy stuff started happening. So he ended up with about 25 offers. Probably 10 of them were committable, but his final 5 were, we went to visits for Mississippi State, Duke, Maryland, SMU in Colorado. And so, thank God we dodged the bullet in Colorado because his mother went to Colorado. So she was kind of pushing Colorado a little bit, but thank God we dodged that nightmare.
I was going to say that's a whole nother conversation we could have been having.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Yeah. And Maryland, was very interesting. Big Ten, Loxley was a great head coach. He's been at Bama. He's doing some good things. But Matthew always, and Maryland's a good school, right? I mean, Mississippi State was just an SEC school,
Right.
that gave him again some street cred because of the SEC. And so, what's crazy is, you're sitting here going, hey, where was Vandy in the picture? And the crazy part was Vandy had him as a tier 2 guy, right? Because again, I was very frustrated with with Vandy's recruiting process, but when Lee came in and the staff he brought in, they're more metrics driven guys, right? So Matthew's just about 6'4", but he's not 6'5". So because he wasn't 6'5", he didn't make the first tier cut. So he didn't get a committable offer from them first. But the crazy part is, here's this new coaching staff recruiting kids. The offensive line coach calls Matthew, and Matthew tells him the whole story. He goes, hey, here's the program. Here's the struggles, because he's been a Vanderbilt fan since he's a baby, right? He's been watching Vanderbilt games since he was old enough to walk. And they were, and the coach was like, holy cow, you really do understand what's going on. But they never offered him. And thank God they didn't, right? I mean, God has a plan type of thing, right? So he ends up, Duke. He goes on his official visit, and I just told him, I said, son, I go, when you get to the place you're supposed to be, you'll know it, right? There'll be a moment during that recruiting trip when it goes, this is where I want to be, right? I like the players, I like the coaches, I like the guys, in my peer group. And we went to Duke, and that happened. And so we ended up, committing to Duke. Now the crazy part is Cutcliffe was the coach at the time,
Right.
And a legend, right? I mean, oh my God, David Cutcliffe, a gentleman of gentlemen, class of class, character oozing out of the man, right? I mean, a guy you just want your son to play for. And of course, they had so Matthew committed in June before his senior year. So we were a commit going to games, and they had a terrible season, 3-9. Cutcliffe gets fired, and so all of a sudden we're sitting there going, "Holy cow!" We don't even know who the coach is, and Matthew's a smart kid, wise beyond his years, takes after his mother, and and we just sat down and said, "Hey, we didn't make this decision for the coach. You made this decision as a 40-year decision." And so we were fortunate. We got Coach Elko, brought in a great staff, brought in a great strength coach. And, hey, he's been to 2 more bowl games than I ever was at, right? So, 9-4 his first season. They're 7-5 now. Hopefully we'll go 8-5, couple bowl games. And he has set up to, have a nice career here his last 3 years, and I think he'll play, knock on wood, some significant time, the last 3 years here.
You said something very important that I picked up on, that you had told Matthew at some point during his recruiting visit, a moment will come.
Mm-hmm.
Is it true that when you visited campus, it was the moment you shook Dino's hand, that's when you knew to commit? Or was it something a little bit later in the evening?
Yeah, I'd say it was a progression.
Well, I know it didn't take long for you to fall in lockstep with Dino and Smitty, Arnett, Thor, and that whole crew. Before we get to that journey, and we are going to get there, I got to know about your conversation with Emmitt Smith Jr.'s father about the 1988 game that he did not play in, that we famously won at home, wearing the, pardon my French, the pea yellow jerseys.
And that they were a wonderful fit. They were a wonderful fit. Those jerseys.
Did your name actually peel off like part of mine did on the back?
I think my dad still wears that jersey to bed every now and then, so I haven't seen it in years. But but it's so funny you asked that question because at our first scrimmage, when Matthew was a sophomore, EJ was a senior, and of course Emmett's a dad, right? I mean, Emmett was in the stands like everybody else, yelling at his son, yelling at coaches. And so after the scrimmage was over, I just went up to him and I said, "Hey, Emmett, I know you don't remember me, but let me tell you what, I played for Vanderbilt, and in 1998, we got you boys at home field." And he was like, "I remember that game. I was sitting at home. I had pulled my hamstring. I was so mad at you guys." And but he talked about the game just the way we're talking about the game, right? I mean, he remembered that. He remembered that game. He remembered not, being a part of it. And he remembered getting us in the swamp the next year and beating the shit out of us and running for, at the time, the SEC single game rushing record the next year. But he is, Emmitt Smith is a class act. Like I said, he's in the stands with everybody during the games. Because of my connection to, because of that kind of connection, we would have conversations. We talk about, oh shit, we're doing this, we're doing that with the Jesuit team. And so it was interesting. And, and his son ended up playing at Stanford. Right. EJ plays at Stanford, and he's had an injury, blew out a knee. So, his career hasn't kind of blossomed the way we all thought it was going to. But I did reminisce with him about that story, and it was a good time. And his son was a good leader and was a good mentor to the younger guys. And so it was a real pleasure for to be able to interact with them in that way. And it was a great experience for Matthew to see what good mentoring is about from a senior classman, right? And so he was very.
It also gave some credibility in his eyes to his father, which he probably gave you a hard time about before that.
Absolutely.
Guys, I got Bobby Craycraft out of Ashland, Kentucky. Bobby lives in Charlotte. His son Matthew plays at Duke, but Bobby was with Vanderbilt 87 to 91. We were teammates for a couple of years. And I want to talk a little bit about when you first came in at Vanderbilt. I want to say, was Warhop your line coach, or was there somebody right before him?
So Doug Bradley was my coach.
Mark Bradley.
Mark Bradley.
Doug Bradley is who
Doug was the DT. Yeah. Mark Bradley. Yeah.
And how about the fact that Coach Mark Bradley is still coaching football with his son Rusty in Asheville?
Is he really?
Over 50 years of coaching.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's
I think Rusty's at maybe Asheville Academy or Asheville Christian Academy, and his dad is on the sidelines on Friday nights helping out.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So you came in, were you a tackle, a guard, or did they know where they wanted to play you? Tell us a little bit about your freshman year.
Yeah, so I played tackle. I played both ways in high school. So I played offensive tackle, defensive end in high school. So coming in, I was always going to be offensive line. They moved me to guard, which was really my natural position. So I started out as guard, and I was your typical, true freshman, right? I mean, just head just spinning around, doing all that, just getting used to things. And we had a really great class of guys, Rod Keith, Big Mo, Clem, Steve Meads, Kenny Joe Walker. Man, we had a great group of guys, and so that was awesome having that. But then about the third game of the season, I ended up spraining my left knee MCL, so it kind of knocked me out for about 8 weeks. And so I didn't need surgery. So I had to they just let me just kind of rehab it on my own, went ahead and took my red shirt year that year. So, I came back late in the season and just kind of, did the scout team thing towards the end there. And, but yeah, so, I think it was, and what's ironic is my son, ended up getting a high ankle sprain last season in camp. He got a high ankle sprain, had to have surgery. So he went through the same process that I went through in our true freshman years. So and so he missed a lot of games, and came back at the end of the season, and obviously was able to get in the bowl. But yeah, but my freshman year was a lot of rehab and a lot of frustration, and but still, learned a lot through that process.
Well, when the decision was finally was made for you to be redshirted, was that a difficult decision for you, or because of the injury, you just felt that was kind of inevitable?
Yeah, it just made it real easy, right? Because that the week that it happened, I think it was week 3. So I think it was going to be, I think it was the Alabama game. Coach Bradley had said, "Hey, you may get some snaps, right? I mean, so get your mind ready.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give you some snaps in this game." And I'm like, "Shit, oh great, guys, give me snaps, and don't give me snaps in a non-conference game. Let's give me snaps at Bama." But again, I was young and naive, and like, "Hey, yeah, let's do it." And so there's that point where I think back when we were playing, and it's still the same today, that you can only play in 4 games, but I think it was the first 4 games, and so I was like, wow, this could be interesting. But after the injury, it became a no-brainer because I was going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, and so it really was pretty stress-free making that decision.
Talk about the academic and social change for you. What was new? How was it easy from those standpoint? Did you find some difficulties from a social? And I know social, it's easy to kind of hide, if you will, within the teammates. I
Yeah,
get that. But
yeah, yeah.
did you make friends on your freshman hall? Did you network a little bit? Talk a little bit about those experiences.
Yeah. So, and I thought it was great the way we did it at Vandy. We were in Branscombe, in the quad there. Of course, I think all that shit's ripped down now. But, we had some, so we were about half a floor football players, half a floor regular students. We had some really neat guys on our floor, Chris Kralik and a couple other guys that are just great guys. So I thought and they kind of like being on the football floor, with some football guys. So, and, a lot of those guys, we were lucky. A lot of the guys on our floor were former athletes in high school. So, we kind of had a connection with a handful of, what I would say the regular students. So, I thought that was good, and enjoyed that, and still have some relationships with some of those folks that we went to school with. And then, I think academically, I started out in computer science engineering, and, coming from Boyd County, Kentucky, what I realized is after about 3 weeks, anything I learned in high school was useless, or I had already moved past it, outside of my typing class, that I could type my papers. But I at the end of the first semester, I remember Rod Keith and I were in organic chemistry together. It was one of those big lecture halls, and we had one of the professors that was like top 10 hardest professors kind of guy.
Right.
And I just remember Rod and I going to class. It was a Tuesday, Thursday class. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. We'd take turns sleeping, so I'd sleep during the first half of class, and he'd take notes. Then he'd wake me up, and then I'd take notes the second half of class. And we had a kid on our hall. I can't remember his name, but he was pre-med, and he was in the class, and thank God for him. But I remember Rod, when I would be studying for tests, and he would walk in my room, or I'd walk in his room, and he would start singing Lee Greenwood's, "Proud to Be an American" song, because he said, "Bobby, at this point, that's all we got going for us." Because we don't have anything else to hang our hat on. And so I was like, holy cow, I am going to flunk out of this damn place here after my first year. And John Denardi, again, 30 some years later, still my best friend. He's put his arm around me and said, "You know what? You need to get over here to arts and science, my friend. Get over here, get over here to liberal arts, get out of this, deal." And So I moved over there and, was able to finish off and get my econ degree. But man, I tell you what, it was such a struggle. That was one of those things that I was able to guide my son through. I was like, don't go in there thinking you're the cat's pajamas here, because you're going to go to school with a lot of really smart cats, and engineering's no joke. And, I remember, when we lived in the towers back there, Kevin Dowling and Mike Marucci would be working in the little common room there off the elevators, working all night. And I'd hear them coming out, after they worked all night going, I told you that answer was one. They'd work all night proving these theorems. And I was like, man, I'm not even smart enough to entertain where your guys' minds are. And Grant Glevy, I had a class with him in computer science, and of course he was a computer science genius.
Yeah.
And he was programming for the IRS in high school. And I mean, I thank God for him, because if I wasn't his partner in that class, I would have gotten an F in that class.
Grant used to type my papers. He charged me $1.25 a page. On a typewriter.
He could make that thing hum too, baby.
He sure did, because I was a history major, so I had lots of papers. So he bailed me out too. I remember you could go to the bookstore and you could cash checks for as little as like $5.
Right.
He didn't want checks, cash only. So I threw them away a long time ago, but I remember looking at my check register from back in college, Vanderbilt bookstore, $5.24. Way before ATMs and any of that good stuff. Guys, I got Bobby Craycraft here tonight, a former teammate. He's out of Charlotte, and we're just running through some good old times back in the 80s. But Bobby, I want to talk about now, come back to the field. You're healthy again. You're starting to compete. Did the game start to slow down for you a little bit, or because we're changing offenses? Remember in '88, we now have Jones, and we're doing all kind of crazy stuff going on. And the offense just kept evolving because Watson was just continuing to tweak it. And we had some great offensive skill guys back in '88. Remember there was the Heisman campaign for Showtime. Did the game start to slow down, or were you still trying to catch up with it a little bit?
Yeah, no, I was really my redshirt freshman year, I was still trying to catch up with it, right? I mean, I started out the year, I was backing up Charles Pearson and Mike Johnson, and I kind of rotated in, every other series with those guys. And I just remember running on the field for my first snap ever versus Mississippi State. We were pinned inside the 2-yard line, and we broke the huddle. And I'm like, shit, what's the play? What's the snap count? And what's going on here? And but it was I was almost blacked out, and so it was happening fast and furious. So that first year, because to your point, Watson was such an offensive-minded guy and was really trying to put Eric in a lot of different, positions. You had Boo Mitchell out there who could, eat any zone defense up, right? I mean, he could find the hole in any zone coverage, and then with just such a hard runner after he caught the ball, right? I mean, unbelievable. But so it was, that first year was really a tough year, just from everything happening, adjusting the speed of the game. And obviously I fought my way through it, but it definitely, that first year was a difficult time, just because we were running a offense I'd never been a part of, right? And Eric was a unique talent, right? So it was a lot of fun though. I mean, I do remember that part of it. It's always a lot of fun to play. And but and then we went to the next year, right? Gromos was the quarterback, started quarterback, and we were now we were pro style offense, right? And so that was another switch. Now that one's a little easier, right? I mean, it's big on big.
Yeah, it's a little different. Yeah,
blitz pickup, but but no, it's I would say that and talking about the game slowing down, really the game never slowed down for me until almost my junior year. I mean, it was in my junior season. I've been playing guard. They moved me out to tackle. And just that spring going into my junior season, after my redshirt sophomore season, I was like, okay, man, I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing things a little clearer. I'm able to react to stuff. So, the first couple of years of playing, just two different offenses, two different things. So it was a lot of change in getting used to that. But it flew by. I'll say that much of it.
Yeah, I've often heard that two things about when the game hasn't slowed down. It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Oh yeah.
You're trying to process so much so quickly. But then when it does slow down, your heart rate slows
Oh
down.
yeah.
You think more clearly, but you're not really thinking, you're reacting as an athlete, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. You've done it so many times, it's that repetitions.
Yeah.
But being in the quarterback room when Watson is drawing up and coming up with the next schemes, I mean, you're talking coming at you
Yeah.
quick. That made it so much fun to try to learn those
Yeah.
things. But Bobby, I want to talk about Brad Bates.
Oh my God.
Talk about his philosophies and how the linemen adapted to it. I know you remember the St. Valentine's Day massacre, and I want you to just share with us a little bit about what you remember. And again, it's been a couple of years, so I don't know if you've worked through that PTSD part of your life, but he was so unique in what he was doing. We didn't appreciate it at the time, but now you do.
Yeah. 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 Well, I would say exactly that is I look at what Matthew's going through now with his strength and conditioning. And really, Brad was really at the tip of the spear in his thinking around the total kind of the overall deal about not only do you have to be strong, you got to be flexible, right? We got to do a lot of different things. We got to push to extremes. I mean, whether it's St. Valentine's Day massacre or we're pushing cars up the ramp in the parking garage full of weights, Joe Blunt's Nissan, pushing that up there.
Or wait, I don't know if you realize this, but Dwayne and whoever was driving, just kind of put their foot on the brake or would pull up the emergency at the
give you a little
I mean, come on now.
Yeah. But recording your reps and tracking your progress and kind of the science the science behind it. But it wasn't just about throwing up a bunch of weight, right? I mean, there was method to the madness. And I always said about Brad, and because I think it was my junior years when he transitioned over to the administrative side, right? And I just always appreciated Brad from the standpoint of he had such a passion for what he did. And I remember when he moved over, and I told people this, I was like, I can't imagine that he's going to be happy on the administrative side of things because he is so passionate about, strength and conditioning and the players and what it was. And, but then when he got over there, it was like, holy shit, he's just as passionate about us learning. And, he used to give those SMA t-shirts, right? If you threw up during the workout, I'm like, shit, he's going to have a SMA t-shirt for throwing up while you're studying kind of thing. But,
and remember, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you remember the postcard we got with Andy McCarroll?
Yeah.
That he was missing us in the summertime. And it was a picture of Andy lifting weights and giving guts up.
But no, he was he was definitely an innovator, right? I mean, well before his time, around what he was doing there on the strength and conditioning front. And I mean, I can't imagine him today with the technology that they have today, the way they use technology, the way these guys orchestrate the lifts. And I mean, the math behind it, it's, the science behind it. It's really fascinating to see what these athletes today go through, from a, firsthand, piece of it. And, watching my son, I tell Denardi all the time that, I mean, I remember when we be running quarters and, John came in after one summer. I don't know if he did all his conditioning at home the way he should have. And we're about on our third quarter. It's 105-degree heat index. And we're going around the corner, and he goes, Thor, he goes, push me into this golf cart. When we go around the corner, I'm going to throw myself into this golf cart and end it. But it's just the whole, and how Brad trained us that way, a lot of the foundation in that, has built up to what it is today, which is a whole different world. But I always appreciated Brad. I think he's just a quality person, quality guy. And, he just one of those people that just cared about people and cared about the kid, cared about us. You felt that, you knew that, and that's why I think he has such a relationship with so many former players, right? I don't know if there's not one player that ever was underneath him in either capacity that wouldn't just do whatever, if he picked up the phone tomorrow and said, "Hey, I need you to do something for me," I think everybody would do it, right? Because he just had that respect for that guy.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But Bobby, we've been talking about 40 minutes now, and one of the themes that I keep hearing from you is one of the cornerstones that I think is so vitally important about playing team sports. Regardless of the sport, regardless of what level you achieve, you keep coming back with big smiles and laughs about memories that are coming up in your mind about teammates and the importance of teammates. You and I are 35 years removed from playing. Oof, I can't believe that.
I know.
But what has it meant to have Dino and Smitty and the list goes on, those guys in your life all these years?
Yeah, that's another one you got me on, Bernard.
Oh, buddy, I don't mean to make the
no.
fire.
No.
But it's so important.
It is. Well, I'll tell you two things. Two quick ones, but Steve Meads, and when I lived in Lexington, Meads and I would do a home and home every Vandy UK game, right? When I was at Vandy, I'd go stay at his house. His two girls were about the same age as my two girls. Then he'd come up and stay with me when Vandy played UK while we were living there. He's a godfather to one of to my children and one of my children, and we were he's godfather to Lucy, my youngest, and before we were going in for the christening, I took a picture with him, Matthew, and I said, "Hey, we'll take the same picture when Matthew's a senior in college."
And teammates have that impact on us, don't they?
Yeah, and it can come true, right? That's pretty awesome, and probably I'm sorry to get all tore up here, but you're right. Just these guys mean so much to me, and but for my 50th birthday, we were going to do this trip, big trip to Hawaii, and my wife had planned this trip, and we'd gone on our honeymoon to Hawaii, never been there since. And so I was like, hey, let's all go. We'll have a big time. And so, we're at the Maui airport in baggage claim, and I look over, and here comes John Denardi with all his family. So total surprise. I didn't know a thing about it. My wife, John, Kathy had all planned it. And so, man, we got in around the same time, and here comes the Nardis. They had t-shirts made up. My oldest daughter, had coordinated and got t-shirts made for everybody.
And you knew nothing about this.
Knew zero. I knew zero about it. And
you must have lost your mind.
Oh my God. And we had some boyfriends and girlfriends. So we had, John's got 4 kids, I got 4 kids. And man, we just, and John and Kathy renewed their vows on the beach one day. And, it was just a beautiful week. And, but that was, but that's the kind of, friends that we have, right? I mean, that you make doing what we do, right? Doing what we did, the all the hard work, pain, suffering, highs and lows. God knows we didn't win a lot of games, but man, we shared a lot together, and we, built that brotherhood. And I'd say, hey, my kids love his kids, like their family, right? I mean, my son and daughters are like, my son's like, all three Denardi boys have to be in my wedding, right? I mean, my oldest, is probably going to get engaged here shortly and get married, married probably the next year or so. And her, and her boyfriend's been a part of our life for about 10 years. They've dated since freshman in high school. And he's like, yeah, the Denardi boys are going to be in the wedding, all three, all three of them. But I look and say, man, that's probably, something I'm so proud of.
Yeah.
Is that our friendship, and our love for each other, transcends our children, right? And that's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. And that's one of the beautiful things about teammates and friendships. And Bobby, it also speaks volumes about you, because it would be very easy that once we graduated from school back in the day before cell phones and internets and all that stuff, that you could go your separate ways and lose those relationships.
Yeah.
But it speaks volumes about you and cultivating those friendships and who you were as a teammate, as a classmate, as a brother in arms. But you're so right. We go through all the hell together. We go through all of the fun times together. But when you look back at that time period, it's such an innocent time in our lives. Of course, and I talk about this all the time, the steroid parties on Saturday nights after basketball games, we just blew it out, because if you really think about it, it was a safe space. We weren't out on the streets. We weren't in the wrong parts of town. We were doing fun stuff at all hours of the night in the towers. And I want you to talk about the Denardi bar for a minute.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, I remember when we had that great idea, and John.
I remember, like, Bobby, the statute of limitations. I checked with some of the Tennessee lawyers. You're good to go.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, there's a few of those things that I think I could have been expelled for, but that I participated in. But no, John, for some reason, he got a corner room, which was a double in the towers. And so he said, let's build a bar one day. And so he, myself, Kevin Brothen decided to build a bar. And so we go out, buy some plywood, buy some. Now, again, here's two guys from Chicago, a guy from Eastern Kentucky who was not handy, trying to put a bar together, right? And we're trying to paint it, shit, we used the wrong kind of paint, the wrong kind of, everything, but somehow we got that thing put together. I don't even know how. I mean, and amazingly, it stayed together. But we built that bar in his room, and then, I mean, I don't know if it was the first weekend or whatever, but, I just remember, since I'd never drank, obviously I always had to go get the kegs and, everything else that was there. I think we had the 6 keg. I remember he was putting playing cards up on his little banister above the bar, every time we emptied a keg. And, we were up to the 6 kegger, and then, I forgot who squealed on us. But I think it was when Kevin decided, oh, we're not going to bring it up through the through the service entrance. Just drop me off in front of the lobby. And of course, that's when Kevin was built like a brick shit house.
Yeah.
And he just put it up on his shoulder and carried it just right through the middle of the lobby. And so, that's
right past Flater's door.
Oh yeah, right past Flater. And I just remember everybody's coming to break up the party, and Rod Keith and I were running down the stairwells with kegs bouncing down with us to get them in the trunk of my car so I could get them the hell out of there. But but no, the bar was it was just a place you call home there, right? I mean, he built that baby. It was right there, and there's a lot of great memories made around that bar. I mean, recruits coming in. I mean, oh my God, I remember getting those poor guys all drunk and liquored up there, and people saying, "I'm coming here." Rob
And,
Jill, some of those guys.
and I know you remember Jeff Mays with the boom box and
Oh
all
my
the
God.
music, and
Yeah.
you could not hear anything.
Oh no, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
But
I remember John Gromos, when he was dating Betsy, and Betsy was in there dancing and having fun, and always enjoyed them. Of course, they go on, get married, have kids, and I mean that's a great story from there. But just again, two quality people, and
that's right. Yeah, I got to sit with John and the Queen, Betsy,
yeah, that's right.
the Auburn game a few weeks back, and got
Oh,
to catch
really?
up. I see John talk to him quite a bit, but I got to catch up with Betsy for the first time in years, and their daughter
Yeah.
Sarah, who just got married this past summer, was
Yeah,
also
that's right. Yeah, yeah. I
also.
ran into him. We all went to the Vandy Notre Dame game
Mhm.
up in Notre Dame back when I can't even remember when that was now, probably 2017 or something. But Betsy and John were at that game, and a lot of folks were there, so that was a great game to catch up with a lot of folks.
Yeah, well, Bobby, it is. We're getting close toward the end of our talk, and man, you're bringing up some just incredible memories and stories. And I've just got a couple of things. The campus, as you may have seen it in the last several years, has
Yeah.
undergone so many changes. And guys, I'm not talking about the athletic stuff that's going on now.
Right.
I mean, Carmichael Towers, rest in peace. All four of them are gone.
Right.
All the streets between the fraternities and sororities are now pedestrian. There's no more traffic, which is great. They should have done that years ago. But here's where I want you to. This is what I want to ask you. When those times you could get away from football, and I don't mean hanging out with the guys at Rotiers. Did you have spots on campus, quiet spots, favorite spots where you could just be a student, just kind of being to yourself, or maybe interact with students around you? I don't know if that was Surratt or the Wall or
Yeah.
wherever it may be. Did you have any places like that you like to go?
You know what? I mean, and I think, when you were just asking that, I mean, I think the Wall was kind of one of those places, right, where, that was just the, gathering place, right, and interaction, and, and you could just be in that crowd, a regular, act like you're a regular student for a while, right?
I mean, you didn't exactly blend. You
Yeah,
were a little bit larger than the average student, but you're right. You could just kind of be whoever you wanted to be at
yeah,
that time.
you kind of blend in there, right? And for me, I dated Kelly during college, and so she was in the sorority, so I kind of had a connection into that group and her group of friends, and kind of the regular students. So I was able, like you said, I stuck out like a sore thumb, but there you kind of just talk about regular student things, right? I mean, they didn't want to talk about football. They really didn't give a shit about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was that time where you could kind of get away, decompress, and the Rites of Spring was always a fun thing to do, and I mean, a lot of again, you're just kind of in the mix there, right? Type of thing, and it's not around what you're doing, so that was always some good fun memories there. But yeah, I think the Wall was always a fun place to be, and a lot of things happening. You see a lot of people, meet a lot of people, and you may not know them, but you knew them, by sight, right? I mean, you'd seen
Right. You
them
might
before.
recognize them from a class or something.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was always, I always thought was a good thing to do.
Bobby, we got Chris Kraus, one of our former teammates, is
Oh,
in the
there you go.
Chris, coming from Manhattan Beach, California.
There you go.
Let's see. Oh, we got OJ Fleming. Hey, OJ. We got Kevin Dowling, as I said. We got the mayor of Murfreesboro. We got Joe Peebles in the house.
Nice. I like it. I like it.
Well, Bobby, it's one of the hardest things about being an athlete, and this day will eventually come for your son as well as it does for everybody. At some point, we have to hang up the cleats.
Right.
We have to transition into the civilian world.
Right.
We hope, in the best case scenario, we do it on our own terms. We retire, long career. But for a lot of us, it's due to injury, or we graduate, or we run out of eligibility. take us to that time period for when that reality came for you, and how'd you handle it?
Yeah, no, it was interesting coming out of our senior season, right? Because for Vanderbilt, we had some success, right? We were 5-6. We got to 5-5. We lost our last game against Tennessee. Corey Harris was just a ungodly athlete, and so our pro days, we had a lot of guys there, right? So we had a lot of teams coming in for the pro days,
Yeah.
and of course Corey ran some ungodly 40s, but his exposure gave Kevin, Brodman, myself, some other Rod, and other guys a chance to say, hey, well, we're here too, and you're sitting there going, hey, and I think that draft year, I think they were 12 rounds in the draft then, right? Not the 6 or 7 that there are now. And so, hey, I was slotted as a potential like 9th round, 10th round kind of pick. And so I'm sitting there going, hey, maybe I can get drafted or do that. And so, you sit there and you're not going to go on the first day of the draft. It's going to be the second day if it happens at all. I had an agent. Kevin had an agent. We're kind of both sitting there at our houses, kind of waiting for the phone to ring, right? And it's
Right,
like,
right.
hey, you get in the 9th round, 10th round, 11th round. It's just like, okay, here it is. And so, so that day you're sitting there and you're just waiting for that. You're hoping for the call, waiting for the call. And, so the draft's over, right? We're not even Mr. Irrelevant, right? At the end of it. And then, my agent at the time called me and said, hey, I can get you, you obviously were disappointed you didn't get drafted, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I can get you, you can get in as a undrafted free agent. There's 3 opportunities. And I was just like, you know what, as a undrafted offensive lineman, free agent, and of course the money wasn't what the money is now and all that. And, I'd had knee surgery on my right knee. And so I was sitting there going, you know what, I went to Vanderbilt for a reason. And, it was just that, talking through it. So I went in and my dad was at work and I went in and talked to my dad and just said, hey man, I go, I could do this, but I just don't think it's the right move. I think it's probably time to hang him up. And so that the day that second day of the draft, so that was probably 92. So I was the spring of 92. I was just like, holy shit, and to your point, it was that deal. I was like, well, I'm never going to play again. I'm never going to play again. But what the ironic part for me was, it was almost just like, okay, it was almost a weight lifted off my shoulders to a certain extent, because there was no pressure then, and my dad and mother was very supportive, and and so it was just one of those things that it just kind of went by and drifted off, and then it was like, okay, we got to get in the real world now. And I realized how, some of the mistakes I'd made along the way of not preparing probably as well as I should have. But yeah, so it was, bittersweet moment, but at the end of the day, it all worked out all right.
Well, I know that your father or your family had a grocery store business
Right.
or grocery business at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't let you get out of here. We're gonna be done in a minute, but I can't let you get out of here without talking about all of the friends and the groceries and what your father or your folks used to bring to school at the pantry, if you will. You
Yeah.
got to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, our stores, we were independent grocers, and Foodland was the our brand, right? I mean, and I'm not sure there's any around anymore, but my dad would bring down, not just a bag of chips, a whole box of chips and Nutter Butters and cookies and whatever else we just had on the list at the time. And of course, this is before Gatorades and Zeros. It was all high sugar. Nutritionists today would never let him bring any of that stuff around us. But so I always had in my room just a stack of to your point, is almost like a pantry, a
Yeah.
good, and I'll never forget. I mean, I can literally shut my eyes and see this picture today. Thor Erickson loves, the local potato chip from my area is called Snyder's Potato Chips, and they have big, like metallic bags. And Thor loved those potato chips, and he loved the barbecue potato chips. And so I would see the door be unlocked, and Thor would be sneaking in and reaching in the box to get a bag of Snyder's potato chips, and just kind of, trot off. He's kind of like a little puppy dog stealing something he knew he shouldn't be in there. But yeah, but Dad always took care of us, and always brought down in the summers. I'd come down with coolers of steaks and different things when we were having to kind of cook on our own and stuff. And so yeah, so that was always interesting. It was always good because I always had a lot of people coming in and out, right? So it was great because I got a lot of interaction that way. But we always did have the care packages, that's for sure. Every week Dad would bring down something.
And not to let Thor off the hook, but his bedroom probably
Oh my
contains
God.
the largest amount of
Oh,
empty bags of chips
oh
that
my
probably
God.
ever recorded in human history.
Yeah. Pizza boxes, empty
Under the
bag.
bed. Everything went
Oh,
under the bed.
oh my God. Yeah, that had to be when they cleaned that room after every year. That had to be the cleaner's mark on the calendar. That
Oh,
took
it's
it.
hazmat. It had to have been hazmat came in from the city of Nashville.
I remember he had a cat. He was dating
Oh
that one.
yeah.
Had a cat in his room. I was like, oh my God, that was crazy.
Well, Bobby, I could talk to you for the next 2 hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. And gosh, I can't thank you enough for running through just some awesome memories of yours and some of mine as well. So thank you, buddy.
No, no. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Sorry, I got all emotional and tore up there a couple of times, but it was great going down memory lane with you there. And I just it just brings it back like it was yesterday. I mean, and that's to me always the tell of a friendship, right? Whether you've seen somebody in the last 10 hours, 10 days, 10 months, or 10 years, your ability to connect back because of that bond that you built all those years ago, right? I mean, and because we did share so many memories in a period of time, and it's fun, and I really appreciate you letting me join in.
That's what it's all about. And
Okay,
guys, that's why I keep doing these conversations every Tuesday for about 4 years now.
that's awesome.
Keep doing them. We've got Commodores from all different years, different decades, scheduled out into February already. So please keep coming back. I keep putting more and more information in the Facebook group about the Black and Gold Club, about the Ingram Center for Student Athlete Success, how to make donations, how to get involved, mentorships, whatever it is, however much you want to get involved, all that's right in there. Or just give me a call. I'll point you in the right direction. Bobby, hang on just a second before we get out of here. Please keep coming back on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. We're telling the oral history of the Vanderbilt football program 1 week at a time. You guys anchor down.